Thanks, Chung. So, welcome to those in the hall. Welcome along tonight. And also a big welcome to those that are on the internet watching in from wherever you are. Very nice to have you along and able to join in tonight's midweek meditation here at the Buddhist Centre in Western Australia. And before we begin, I would just like to let everybody know too, especially though, or really for the benefit of those people that are listening outside, the care group line is open now. There is listeners waiting in the house ready to take your call, and those phone lines are open. You can find or see the telephone numbers on the bottom of your screen, and you'd be very welcome to call in, and you can talk about anything at all that you like. Want to talk about something that's happened or anything particular that you're feeling at the moment, you're very welcome to ring up. You'll find a listening ear there in our care house tonight. So you can call from anywhere around the world. There's a telephone number there with a WhatsApp number, but equally you can just call on the regular number which is also there. So that's the care group that is open right now, and we'll be until about 9 o'clock or so tonight. So I'd also probably just by way of advertising, well, there's two things that I'd like to just mention too. That Ajahn Brahm's birthday is coming up. That's on August the 7th, and there's a day that we've got planned down at Jhana Grove for him, and he's of course well aware of all of this and joining in. But next week too, there's a very large scale, I think it will be very large scale, meditation project that's being run by Prem from our centre here, and that's a sort of a worldwide effort for people that want to join in. It'll be on the website, and you will be able to find details of that there. But if you want to join in the metta meditation and dedicate it all to Ajahn Brahm for his birthday, that will start the week before his birthday. His birthday is Saturday the 7th of August, so that week preceding there will be all of these activities that are happening here and around the world. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention too, for those that haven't heard or didn't know, that we're very sad to hear that Prakanti Palo died week before last. Prakanti Palo was one of the people that were very instrumental in helping to get this centre in Western Australia going, the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. And the Buddhist Society of Victoria actually did a very nice tribute to him. In fact, one of our monks, Ajahn Nasarano, gave a very nice, or led a very nice tribute to Prakanti Palo. So if you'd like to see that, it is, if you just look in Google and put in Nasarano, BSV, and probably Kanti Palo, that's Khantalo, I think I've got that right. Kanti Palo, so just the KH, and you'll be able to sort of see that wonderful tribute to him. He certainly did a lot of things in his life. He was 88 years old when he died. For those in the hall here that remember him, you'll be probably like me, just sad to see him go. He wrote many books too. There's many books in our library that he wrote, and they're still all in print too. So quite a wonderful man. So tonight I'm going to talk about, or I've sort of labelled the talk as "The Universe is Always with Us," and this is really one of my favourite things to think about it, because it goes with stillness just so well. And what I hope to do tonight is to, in introducing this in this way is really just to give you a little bit of an idea of what I mean by the fact that the universe is always with us. And whenever those that have been following the meditations that I've done here, you'll sort of notice that I do like to spend a fair bit of time in just being associated with the body at the start of a meditation, and then also just allowing time to ground ourselves into this earth and also into the universe itself, because hopefully, as I'll be able to show you tonight, when we actually get to the meditation, the guided meditation part of this evening, I would like to sort of guide you into that knowledge of just having that grounding in the earth with us, and really and indeed the whole universe, because as I've mentioned here before, that is very true that all of the elements in our body really do come from the centre of stars. I mean, it's not something that we would normally think about, but this is really true. Any element that is heavier than iron is indeed made in the centre of stars and is usually distributed into the universe when there's these titanic supernova explosions that happen in space. All sounds quite bizarre, doesn't it, when you start thinking about it like that? But that's really the reality of really how the heavier elements in our body got into our bodies, really, just from the centre of stars. So you can see that we are in a very real way connected into this universe. You know, we are in a way children of the stars, and indeed we cannot be anything else but sort of part of this earth too. We're made of the earth and we go back to the earth. But we'll look into all of that a little bit more as we go on. But I want to just show you really, or hopefully demonstrate just how all of this does take us back into the very heart of what meditation is. And that's really to find that stillness in our mind, to find and really be with that stillness. But just to kick off, I'd written down, or just printed off this in very big print for myself, so I find it very difficult to read these any kind of small type at all now. But I just wanted to read you a little section of a poem that William Blake wrote. I know Ajahn Brahm is very fond of saying this poem too. But I'm very much a fan of William Blake. I've actually been into his the room that's sort of set aside for him in the Tate Modern in London, and there's a whole room of his paintings, and the verse that he wrote was just quite wonderful. But anyway, I'll just read you this little first section of a verse of one of the poems that he wrote that really go to this idea of the universe being with us all of the time. And he says, "To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour." Quite a wonderful little stanza that he wrote. And William Blake was a man who, whilst he was sort of an unusual, he was certainly very deep and quite profound in the way that he wrote his poetry and really saw the world, I think, too. But I'm sure that in his time he was really one of those people that was very sceptical about the idea of being able to measure the world that's outside there, this world that's outside of our bodies and mind. Indeed, in this art gallery in his rooms at the Tate in London, there is this painting that I really love. Actually, it's a painting that he's drawn of Newton, and it's all painted in a period time, so sort of scholastic kind of Roman type of picture, but he did mean it to be Newton. And he's got him depicted naked, and he's sitting on the top of this sort of rock. It's like a rock of coral, huge, very large, sort of it could be a rock or it could be a coral. You don't really know what it is, but it's really multicoloured. It's a beautiful looking item that Newton is sitting on in his nakedness. But he has there a great divider, or a measuring divider, in his hand. It's a wonderful painting. You can look it up on the web and you'll see it there. That's one of his more famous paintings. But it was a painting that he did to really, I think, probably show his scepticism to those who thought. I mean, I don't know what he thought about Newton, because I think Newton was a wonderful physicist, a wonderful scientist myself. But I know that Blake probably just did have this scepticism about being able to measure the outside world and make sense of it in that way, because that's really not the way that he that poem that I've just read there, that little stanza, doesn't really stand up to that. So he's really poking a bit of fun at the way we do try to measure the outside world. But then, having said that, I know today I'm very, very grateful for the physicists and the scientists that do their work, just in the way that they've shown us really the scales of this universe. I think it's just a wonderful thing. And what I note when I think about this really is that the scales that the physicists sort of show us are really exactly the same scales that the Buddha was talking about all those years ago. The Buddha saw all of this very clearly in his mind. But I'm talking here, though, about the scales that physicists are able to illustrate to us in the form of quantum mechanics, just in the way that they measure the very, very smallest of things in the universe, and these things that are just infinitesimally small. Indeed, we can know from quantum mechanics that anything less than 10 to the minus 43, so that's 43 to the minus 43 zeros, and then 43. 10 to the minus 43 with 43 zeros before you get a number it just shows you the infinitesimal size of what that number is, and physicists now know that you can't really measure anything smaller than that in time. And there's an equivalent to that in space too. The equivalent is 10 to the minus 32 centimetres. So you can't really measure anything beyond that. That's the limits of the physical measurements of the universe. Beyond that, quantum mechanics tells us that everything in there, everything beyond that is this quantum space, this quantum time, which is really, the way they talk about it is virtual space. And from my point of view, or the way that I kind of see it, because the Buddha did talk about these infinitesimally small amounts of time, especially when he was talking about consciousness. He talked about consciousness as being something that begins and ends countless times in the wink of an eye. Begins and ends countless times in the wink of an eye. So very, very similar to the way that you might think about that quantum mechanical time. And I think it's quite instructive in a way to just use that idea of time beyond, time and space beyond those abilities to measure, that we can measure just in our meditation, because I really do think that this is very equivalent to the stillness that we can see in our mind, where we have like a virtual space and time that's there. And indeed, in my work as a hypnotherapist, when I'm working with people with past life issues and things like that, it's usually that it's in that space that usually you find that these stories will come out, stories of the past. And I think as we go on tonight, I want to sort of demonstrate to you and just show you that really everything that is there in the universe from the very beginning up till now and continuing on into the future is all right there in this present moment. So anyway, I've talked here about the smaller smaller end of the smallest end of the scales, but I also just want to just relate to the larger end of the scales too, because I mean we know when we look at the universe, we're looking over a vast area, 14,000 million years old. Apparently, this universe is, according to physicists, since it began with what they talk about as a Big Bang. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to hold out the Big Bang as something that's true, but it's just interesting the way that physicists kind of measure this huge amount of time. Now, again, the Buddha actually made a similar comment about the scale in the large sense like this. He talked about about a kalpa. And a kalpa is a Pali word that really means a universal cycle. And he said that a kalpa is such that if you went into Benares and you got the finest silk that you could find there, and you dragged that silk once every 100 years over the hardest and highest mountains in the Himalayas, by the time that mountain was worn to the ground would be the time of a kalpa. So an enormous, in his mind you could see that he's talking about an enormous length of time, very similar to what we might think of a universal time span, because I mean we don't really even know how long, even physicists don't really talk about that too much, that might be 60, 80, 100,000 million years or something like that. It depends on really how the universe will begin. But the Buddha, in his mind, when he was asking about consciousness, actually, he was talking about consciousness, and the monks asked him, where does this consciousness begin? And the Buddha said, I have been back in my mind over 24 kalpas, 24 universal cycles. And he said, no beginning can be seen. So you can see from that just how in this present moment we have these aggregations, and he talked a lot about that too. I don't know that I'll have time to sort of go into all of that tonight, but he talked about the way that this stillness, the consciousness of mind aggregates. It aggregates and builds up in a nested way, so you get these little nested situations, one thing building on another that building on another. And this is probably all going to evolution as well, all very much in line with the way that physics works. For us to get to where we are here today, sitting in this hall, watching from where you are at home, it really, as we sort of get into this a little bit further, and I'm sort of hope to be able to sort of show you, it really takes all of that time, all of those conditions that have happened, all of that nested conditioning that starts from the very basic unit, if you like, of consciousness that just begins and ends countless times in the wink of an eye. And then as these conscious moments build and as phenomena happens, well then this aggregation that he talked about is really starting to come there. And there are just very quickly, if you're coming back from the fifth khandha is consciousness. Khandha is aggregation, it means aggregation. A khandha is a Pali word that means aggregation. But if you're coming back from pure consciousness itself, the Buddha talked about the fourth khandha being that movement of mind. So the mind, is still when we're looking at it tonight to see this stillness. But as we look at that stillness, when the stillness starts to move, it's very different than when it's still, very different. It's already starting to move into a creative form. So the stillness starts to move, and then the third khandha, coming back down to the first khandha, which is the physicality, but the third khandha is perception. He talked about perception. That's a very, very strange thing, perception too, because perception really does depend in many ways on our view of things and the way that works. So it's always very instructive to look at that perception. And the second khandha is feeling. I'm going to come in and talk about feeling again in a minute too. But the second khandha is feeling, and then the first khandha, the very first khandha, is physical, and by that the Buddha was meaning everything that is physical in existence, meaning anything from all of the basic elements through our bodies, through to all the conditions that are in the universe, the physical. So he basically had, you could say, he sort of allocated 20% of the khandhas to the physical, but you might notice that the other 4, or 80% if you like, he's attributed to the mind. And that's sort of an important thing, and really where I'd like to sort of go to, just to maybe help everyone sort of see and understand just the way and why this mind is so important to understand the mind. So the Buddha talked about 4 foundations of mindfulness. And those 4 foundations, they start off, just as we're going to do with the meditation, they start off with mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of this body. So we'll certainly go into it. We do that most weeks, you'll probably recognise. But then the second foundation of mindfulness is the foundation of feelings. And I think it's very interesting that the Buddha put that in there, to be mindful of feelings is one of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. To be mindful of feelings. And again, tonight I'd like to sort of go into that with you a bit and just work through just what that means. And then the third foundation of mindfulness is being mindful of the mind itself, being mindful of the mind. I'm not talking here about the brain necessarily, or really any other part that's physical. Here, I think we get to understand this with much more clarity when we can see it with the stillness, because in actual fact it ends up being the stillness of our mind that actually is really, that describes for us or shows us the extent or the matrix of our mind, just what our mind exists in. It exists in this still consciousness, the still consciousness of mind. And so, very, very important, that third foundation to be mindful of the mind. And we'll try and see if we can get to where that will take us as we get into it. And then the fourth foundation of mindfulness is being mindful of what he called Dharma or Dharmas. And with that, I think you can just sort of take it to mean certainly the Buddha's Dharma, the Buddha's truth, if you like, what he teaches. But it also really, the way that it's described, and I'm sort of taking all this from a text that Venerable Gunaratana, very, very wise monk, lived in America. He's written a fair bit about this, and he talks about it, and the Buddha talked about it too, as phenomena, like the phenomena of the mind. So the dharmas of the mind is really referring to the phenomena of the mind. And this is really just the way that things aggregate in the way that I've been saying, the way things that do build up and evolve. And he's asking us to be mindful here so that we can sort of begin to understand just what that means. So this view of mindfulness, you can see, is really quite profound. So if you can bring that idea of mindfulness to your practice, it's really quite wonderful, just some of the things that you can discover, because mindfulness itself, as I've been in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think, or the last few times that I've given a talk here on Wednesday night, I have spoken about the 7 factors of mindfulness. So the 7 factors of enlightenment, rather, not mindfulness, the 7 factors of enlightenment. And the first factor is mindfulness. So here tonight I'm just sort of breaking down just what mindfulness actually means. So mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind itself, and mindfulness of the dharmas or the phenomena that is there apparent in our mind. Might just mention there too that just reading Ajahn Chah, who was Ajahn Brahm's teacher, of course, he used to exhort his monks, especially at the beginning of a retreat, he exhorted them not to worry about what anybody else is doing or what he's doing or what any of the other senior monks are doing. He's saying that the responsibility of the monks that are there on retreat for that long retreat, which our monks have just started on now for the next 3 months. But he exhorted them all just to only know the 2 things. He just said just to know what is apparent, so you know what's apparent in the world, but you also know the transcendent. And here he's kind of referring to the stillness of mind, because it is very possible, hopefully, as you'll see, to be mindful of these conditions as and to know also the transcendent still consciousness that's there, because when still consciousness is there, you are getting close to truth. And just maybe re-establishing that again too, just this, I can sort of say that confidently, that it's getting close to truth because it's close to the present moment. If you've got your mind strong and powerful enough to be able to just be present, this is a very, very good thing, because you're not getting pulled out into the phenomena. We've kind of got into the phenomena in the way that you might be thinking about the world or thinking about different things, the way things should be or not, or not in the world. When we're back and we're anchored into the present moment, we're actually living our lives close to truth. And it's a very beautiful thing to see. As hopefully, again, I'll try to help you with when we start to look at this. And it's already half an hour I've talked anyway now, so I'm sort of probably need to get on and talk a little bit about, or rather just do a little bit of meditation about that. But I hope that's enough introduction for you to just be somewhat interested anyway in investigating this whole process of why this universe is with us all of the time, and just what that means, what it means to sort of know that. So without further ado, I would ask you just to find yourself a nice meditation posture, for those on the floor and for those on the seat. And we're going to sort of move into these 4 foundations of mindfulness. So first of all, we'll just start with being mindful of our body. So if you can close your eyes. And for those at home, do the same thing. If you're sitting in a chair or you're sitting on a cushion somewhere, just make yourself comfortable and make your back nice and straight. And always good to relax. Energy is really good to think about, just getting your energy nicely balanced. Right energy is one of the Eightfold Paths too, so the Buddha always talks about energy, and it's also one of the factors of enlightenment, so very important element. So just finding the energy nice and right, and then your head pointing to the top of the ceiling. I'm sort of mimicking here Ajahn Jagaro. This is how he used to sort of teach. He used to talk about the ears being straight up and down, the head pointing to the top of the ceiling. for those of you that remember Ajahn Jagaro all those years ago. And just folding your hands in front of you, usually right hand on the left if you've got nothing else to, no other definite way that you'd like to do it, and just hold your hands quite loosely, just so that you start to become aware that there is a little bit of tingling around the ends of your fingers. So back nice and straight, and just take a few deep breaths and just come to see yourself sitting. And just sitting in this comfortable posture. And you can, if there's anything that's obviously making you uncomfortable just in this, at the beginning here, just allow yourself to move. Always moving mindfully, but gently. And if you need to, we never want to really punish ourselves here, so it's not necessary to try and push yourself, especially if it's going to hurt you or give you some injury. We don't really want that. So just be very gentle with yourself. And then after you've taken a few deep breaths, and you can see and feel yourself sitting. Even feel yourself sitting on your cushion. Feel the pressure that you're putting on the cushion or on the chair that you're sitting on. And then just bring your attention to your feet and round your toes. I always like to just start off by just picking a toe, any toe at all you like. Little toe if you like, but if you prefer the bigger ones, you can go for the big toe or the second toe. But just feel into that toe. You feel, the way you feel is like feeling the way that it is against maybe the socks that you're wearing, or the way it sits on the floor. Pressure that's exerted onto the floor. And then just letting your attention run over the arch of your foot and into the heels. I know with my heels, I'm usually feeling into them. I can usually feel the thicker skin around the heels that oftentimes I need to file off. But then just moving your attention up through your ankles, and just the way that they've set themselves, depending on how you're sitting, how they're articulating. And they're just joined onto the lower part of your leg or your shins. And as you run your attention up through the shins and the calf muscles, again, anything that you can feel there, if you're feeling against fabric or if you're feeling even the air on your skin. It's important just to understand what it means to feel. Not thinking about feeling, but actually just experiencing the sensation of what's being felt. Then moving the attention through the knees. And then into the upper thighs. Thighs are always interesting to experience because the big muscles there, I think, are quite... You can usually feel the strength or intuit the strength that's there. And then moving through into the bottom, again just feeling the way that it's sitting. And then hopefully you're nicely balanced on top of that part of your body, just your tummy and your lower back. Just got enough energy in your body just to keep the body nice and straight and relaxed. And then moving the attention up into the more upper part of your body, the upper back and around the shoulder blades. And again up into the chest. And when you've got a bit of time too to do this, you can always stop and linger around these parts in the trunk of the body, around the tummy, and always lots happening there, especially if you've just eaten a meal. You can usually experience all the little happenings that are going on in there as the little rushes and the gurgles, the movements. And then up into the chest, all of the rhythms that are there in your chest from the heart. You know, right through to all of those other little clangs and clatters that are going on. Quite wonderful actually just to realise what's happening in your body, all of these things working in unison to keep you alive. And then feeling around your shoulders and the way your arms hanging down are bent at the elbows and moving into the forearms and into the hands and the fingers. And this is where I always like to just stop and linger a little bit around the fingers, just experiencing that little feeling, that tingling feeling that's there right at the tips of your fingers. If you just let your hands go a little loose, not too tight, you can feel that tingling from the nerve endings that are there. And if you're really observant, you can sort of notice, once you sort of become aware of that effervescent feeling, that kind of almost a buzzing feeling, you might even be able to sort of then move to other parts of your body, on the external parts of your body, and notice that that tingling is really everywhere. All around your body, from your feet up through your legs, through the trunk of your body, up into the head. And when that tingling is there for you, you can be very confident that you're starting to relax. Your body is starting to really relax. And hopefully you can feel that. Then moving your attention up through your neck and into your head, around the back of your eyes and around the mouth and the lips. Again, there's always lots of tingling there. And then up into your head and right towards the top part of your head, and the cranium, right in the top part of your cranium. All of that energy that's there. And then you can just see yourself sitting. But then beyond that now, I'd like you just to feel the way that you are anchored into your seat. You know, you can feel just the weight of your body. Because it's not weightless, is it, your body? It feels, you can feel its heaviness, its mass. And the way that you're being pulled into the earth, pulled into the seat. And here you might even be able to just imagine or intuit the way that the gravitational field lines are just pulling you towards the centre of the earth. The mass of this earth is having a great effect on your body, keeping you in place, relaxed and comfortable, but nonetheless still anchored to the earth. And you can reflect on that and just know that this is really the way it is, the way that it is with your body. Anchored to the earth because we're part of this earth. All of the elements and the parts of our body that are physically made come from this earth. When we eat our food, the food comes from this earth. And the water we drink, also from this earth. We really are part of this earth, and it's quite a wonderful thing to acknowledge, just the fact that we are earthlings, and right here now we're grounded into this earth. And just before we go any further with connections like that, I'd like you just to check in again with yourself, just to notice. And I'm imagining that you will already starting to be feeling in your mind quite still. Because certainly I would like you just to be able to be aware that there's words being spoken, but I don't really, or it would be good if you didn't necessarily take any notice of the words. Just allow the words to be. So you just know that they're there. We're not trying at all to construct a meaning for them. That will all just happen naturally. So don't even think about what's being said or what the meaning of what's being said might be. And as you do that, you just notice that the mind now is really already quite still, because the body's relaxed. And because the body's relaxed, the mind is also relaxing. And I'd like you just to see if you can experience just what that feels like. Have a mind that's not moving. And Sameto talks about this as the silence of the mind, the silence. But it's something you can feel. So we've moved very much from now the mindfulness of the body, and we're moving more into the feeling part of ourselves, just feeling the experience, being with the experience of just sitting, but already starting to get some idea of what the mind's like when it's not moving, when it is just still. And just before we move on to the third foundation of mindfulness, I would like to again just remind you of this as part of this grounding that I'm trying to demonstrate here is just also the connection that we've got with the universe itself. So those field lines of gravity that we were talking about before, holding you down to the centre of the earth. We can know and experience, really, the way that these field lines are sort of moving right up into the universe itself. Because we can know that the moon is affecting the earth, and the sun is affecting the moon and the earth. And we are in a gravitational attraction around the sun. And then all of this system is connected into another system, a galactic system, and the whole Milky Way galaxy. And this galaxy is connected into a cluster of galaxies. And so it goes on and on. All these little nested arrangements of phenomena, these little nested creations of consciousness. All right there, moving right out into the centre of the universe. And of course all this moves right back to the very first elements that were made, right back near the beginning of the universe. The first photons of light. So all of that, the whole 14,000 million years of this current universal cycle is all right there in this present moment, and it's holding you in your seat right here now. And you realise that it can't be any other way than that. It's taken this whole universe for you to be sitting just right here and now, where you are at this present moment. Whether you're here in Perth or whether you're in countries far away from Australia. Each person is experiencing their own universe. And the whole lot is just sitting there with you on your mat. And as you notice, it just can't be any other way. Because this present moment is a truth. We can know that all this past stuff is gone. And we can know that the future is yet to come. And eventually, as we become comfortable with this, we realise that this present moment is really a very powerful truth. And then just starting to become more mindful of the mind itself. So becoming mindful of the stillness. the way this stillness resounds. You can even get a sense of the way it iterates countless times in the wink of an eye. Beginning and ending. And you can just feel just the beauty of this, of the way that this experience is. The beauty of the way all of those connections right back to the beginning of the universe are all there in the present moment. And as your mind becomes more still, you'll start to notice the clarity that comes inside that stillness. The clarity that enables you to be able to see and experience. This beautiful still consciousness. And just the beauty that it presents to us, the way that every little nested phenomena, every little nested dharma, which is associated with the fourth foundation of mindfulness, all of these aggregations the way that it's all been created in our mind. Right there in the present moment. I don't know how that feels like for you, but for me it's kind of brings me an overwhelming feeling of bliss and beauty. Brings tears to my eyes just to see all those beautiful connections and the way all this is working to allow me to breathe, to be alive. And you can just now allow yourself to come to your breath. Just notice the way that the breath begins, bringing the air in and coming to a stop on the in-breath, and then a reconditioning, and the breath then starts to move out. It's beginning and it's ending. This breath that has taken the whole universe to create for us. Beautiful, magnificent. Wonderful, full of wonder and mysterious. we're just allowing this whole mystery of the whole thing just to be. And letting ourselves just relax into this moment, absorb into this moment. And feel the way that, what it's like and the experience of what it's like to absorb into the breath, absorb into the stillness. Becoming more refined. More subtle. And so it is with the joy that we experience. That too becomes more subtle. But in its subtlety it becomes more powerful, more compelling. As it takes us towards this truth. We're really starting to understand and get to know what this still consciousness really is. And the way we can have a view of this consciousness, that this still consciousness that allows us to create the world in the way that we see it. And it's all just there in this present moment. So beautiful, so powerful. We're able to see this river of still consciousness that just flows in our lives, and we realise that we can use this still consciousness as a datum. A datum to keep us anchored into the truth, into the present moment, so that we're not lost in the world, not lost in our thoughts, but starting to see these dharmas, this phenomena, mindfully, the fourth foundation of mindfulness. We're starting to see it all for what it is. Conditioning. And we can see it all against the truth of the stillness, the still consciousness that's there, right in the heart of the present moment. And just this beautiful breath, life-giving breath. That's giving us the ability to reflect, to self-reflect, and see and understand what the Buddha saw and understood. The way that all of these dharmas, these phenomena, are dukkha, we can start to see the unsatisfactoriness of them all when we start to realise the beauty and the power and the strength and the truth of the stillness. And we can start to see the impermanence of it all and the way that we grasp and hold on to it. But here now, in this present moment, we have the opportunity to just let go. Just be with the stillness. And to see what a joy it is, how powerful it is. As we become involved with this virtual space, this virtual energy, this virtual time. And we can know that it is setting us up to be able to see what the Buddha saw. We're starting to approach the door of the transcendent. In a moment I'm going to ring the bell. Don't really feel like ringing it really, but I will ring the bell. And I'd like you all just to stay with your meditation for a time, just to keep your eyes closed and just reflect on what's happened. Reflect on where you've been, what it feels like. But also to see if you might be able to just bring that stillness with you when you open your eyes and the five senses come back into place. Just notice if you can bring the stillness with you so that you can notice the seeing consciousness inside the stillness. The smelling consciousness, the tasting consciousness, and the feeling, that tactile sensations, with the consciousness still present right there. So at the end of the third resonance of the bell, you can just gently open your eyes and come back to the room. Did everybody get a taste of the stillness? Yeah? It's good. You start to see, as we're working through this and investigating it all, you start to see just the way that these scales of phenomena, right from the very small and fast nature of the still consciousness right through to the way that builds up in the final analogy with the universal cycles, just huge, huge lengths of time and space. Right from the very smallest to the very largest, the astronomical scales. But we can start to see this too when we're looking just at the breath. Just the breath is in there. We can see the second and the third noble truth. The breath begins. It's conditioning coming about, being born. And then the breath goes out, finishes, it dies, only to be conditioned again, to come in, go out. So these scales, you can see the scale there of a scale of a breath, and maybe then if you reflect, you can see the scale of a week, scale of a year, scale of a lifetime. But then as we start to understand this stillness more and more, you start to see that these scales of things and this flow of consciousness, this flow of conscious energy is there all of the time. So then the death of the body doesn't become so frightening, so scary. Because it's just something that happens, it begins and it ends. So, I'll leave my remarks here. We've sort of gone over time a little bit. Don't know if there's any questions from the room or any questions from the internet. I didn't really ask anyone if they really wanted to, but you do have some questions, Chung? Very good. Thank you. One question, we'll see if I can read it. Well, greetings from Cassandra in Sweden. Just wondering where would the best place to get the suttas in a book from? Where would be the best place to get the suttas from a book? Certainly Wisdom Publications, if you were to just look them up on the net, I think they have some wonderful publications of the suttas. I think that'd be the best. I don't know if there's anyone else in the room that can help me with anything that's better than that. Yeah, indeed, yes. If you, there's a website called Sutta Central. It's actually run by one of our own monks who set that up. So you'd be very welcome to go there too. It's really quite well established now, Sutta Central. It's working. But if you did want it in a book, I think if you just went to a good bookshop, the Wisdom Publications certainly do a lot of the suttas, and I think if you looked up that website, if you're in Sweden, I would say that you would have probably wonderful bookshops there in Sweden to pick up all of this stuff. Yeah, so. Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, I'm just being told here that there's a monk called Bhikkhu Bodhi who, well, he's actually, there's a lot of the Wisdom Publications are books that have been written by him. Indeed, our own Ajahn Brahm has had a big input into a lot of these translations as well. And Brahmali too, our Venerable Brahmali is becoming quite adept at doing these kinds of things as well. But yeah, I think you'll have no troubles finding the suttas from places like that. So thank you very much for that question, and for tonight's meditation, we'll just pay respect to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha, and then you're all very welcome to stay behind, because Ron has got some munchies for us, some food and a cup of tea, and we'd very much like to meet you all over in the kitchen, and we can continue the discussion over there if you like. So good night to everybody, and we'll pay respect to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha.